Our first speaker for the day is Ms. Prachi Shivgaonkar. She is a media professional, communicator, and the founder of Cool the Globe, an app and a movement for climate action. Ms. Prachi has helped several sustainable initiatives and businesses craft a communication strategy. She has been mobilizing global citizens to fight climate change through technology, innovation, and grassroots action.
Sounds like she'll be the one to lead us in the revolution against climate change. We now call upon the virtual stage, Ms. Prachi Shivgaonkar. Over to you, Ms.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much, Zoya and Aryan. It's so amazing to be here. And by the way, Zoya, I also like pineapple on pizza. I in fact wrote a Quora article about it. So I'm also from the pineapple on pizza gang. Um, Thank you so much for inviting me here. It's a Saturday afternoon here in Pune, where I'm from. It's raining outside, beautiful weather here. And I have to tell you, there's nothing else I would rather be doing right now than talking to you. And that's because a few years ago, when I started Cool the Globe as a young student like you from my dorm room, I didn't know that people like you existed. I didn't know that there's such amazing young people, maybe on the other side of the world, who can join me on a quest to fight climate change. And just the fact that all of you inspiring people have come together and organized an event like this in an effort to bring people together and in an effort to bring about change, if that can happen, then anything can happen. So thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very, very happy to be here. So I don't know what you want me to talk about. I think I would just like to tell you about why I started Cool the Globe. It also started when I was a very young student and I wasn't as informed and as amazing as you are right now. I was a bit clueless at the time. But I kept hearing a lot about climate change, and I just asked myself two very simple questions that I think any ordinary person would ask themselves. And the first question was, why should I even care about climate change, right? And so I read up on the impacts of climate change. And I came across sea level rise, global warming, coastal erosion, impact on the Indian monsoon, loss of biodiversity, all of those big, heavy and scary words. And while that seemed very bad and very scary, I had a moment of honesty with myself. And I asked, do you really care about all of this? And I said, no, I don't care about this to make enough. I don't care about this enough to actually make any change in my life. Obviously I have, like, in my defense, I had a lot on my plate, right? You know, I had just entered college. I had friends to make, I had exams to give, assignments to submit, and I had a lot on my plate. And I thought at the time that polar ice melting in some other part of the world is not going to be one of the things I'm going to care about. And then as a media professional, I got an opportunity to interact with a lot of people from different walks of life. And some of those very amazing and very inspiring people changed my mind. And I want to tell you about some of those incidents today. One of the incidents happened not very far from my home a few years back. One night, it rained extremely heavily. It rained like I had never seen it before. And even at the safety of my home, I sat scared, not knowing what's happening. And unbeknownst to me, a lot of people lost their homes that night because a canal near my house flooded. And in the morning, as I went on a walk to see the aftermath of what has happened, I saw a dead cattle lying on top of a car. And next to them, I saw an old couple struggling to retrieve their only source of income, which was a vegetable cart, now destroyed completely by the heavy rains. That's when I realized that when I hear about flooding and extreme weather events as impacts of climate change, it's not just random words, it's people's livelihoods. Climate change impacts our sources of income. Climate change impacts our livelihoods. And for millions of people in India and outside, it impacts our ability to provide for our families. The second person I want to tell you about is one of the most inspiring women I've ever met. I met her when she was about my age. She was 18 years old and I met her in a displaced colony of waste workers in Bangalore. She had come from Bangladesh. She was a refugee. She was about my age, but she was already married and she had a small daughter. And the day I met her, I walked 5 kilometers with her to the nearest school district. She went to the school, sat at the doorstep, and demanded that her daughter be admitted into the school. But they couldn't do that because she didn't have the necessary documents and the daughter didn't know the language, Kannada. And so she couldn't get a place into the school. But this woman, she didn't give up. For the next 2 months, every single day, she walked those 5 kilometers to that school. She sat at the doorstep and she demanded that her daughter be admitted into the school. And finally, they found a way around the technicalities and the language barriers, and her small daughter got a place into the classroom. Now, what does this have to do with climate change? Let's talk about millions of climate refugees around the world who have to completely disrupt their livelihoods because of extreme weather events, floods, droughts that happen into their hometown. They have to change their homes, flee into an unknown area, and start their lives from scratch with children in hand. And I realized that this is something that I do care about. And it's amazing young people like you who have today the power to influence the life of another young person. And the fact that you're doing it already is so inspiring. So when I came across many people like that, I realized that climate change is not just about the heavy impacts that we hear about. It's about climate change impacts our homes, it impacts our food, it impacts our health, our livelihood. And lastly, it impacts the people around us that we deeply care about. And when I realized that, I decided that I had to do something. And the second question I asked myself was, what can I, as a young student, do about climate change? And I couldn't really find an answer to that very easily. So I did what any young person would do. I'm sure all of you also do that. I went to my parents and I asked them, what do you think I can do about climate change? And so we came up with an idea. We decided that together as a family, we would reduce our own greenhouse gas emissions by 10%. And so that's what we started doing. We started researching on what are the different actions we can take in our day-to-day life to reduce our emissions. Which part of my activity was leading to the most greenhouse gas emissions? How could I measure my contribution? How could I measure my impact? And as I started doing that, two very strange things happened. The first strange thing was that I started having fun. It almost became like a nice game I was playing with my family. And from the hopelessness of what's happening, that is climate change, it became something that was hopeful. The second strange thing was so many of my friends, relatives came and said that it sounds like you're doing something interesting and we want to join you. And that's when I started thinking, how can amazing people like us around the world be connected on a common quest to do something about climate change? And that's how Cool the Globe was born. We decided to build an app which would help individuals like you and I reduce our own greenhouse gas emissions to a target. And throughout my college years, I worked on building this app. And by the time I graduated, it was ready. So what the app does is that as soon as you get into it, every single person is given a clear target of reducing their own greenhouse gas emissions by 10%. So for me, for example, I live in India. My target this month is to reduce my greenhouse gas emissions by 30 kg. And now I can do, then the app shows many simple actions you can take in your day-to-day life to do that. We have over 55 simple actions that we can take. So for example, this month, it's very hot here in India. So I'm letting go of hot water showers. I'm showering with cold water. And just by doing that, I'm saving 14 kg of emissions. I'm working from home. So today, instead of going to my office by car, which is 10 kilometers away, I talked to you from my home and I saved 2 kg of emissions by doing that. I did not buy 4 pairs of jeans this month. And by doing that, I saved about 1 kg of cloth and I saved 10 kg of greenhouse gas emissions. So when we can measure the exact contribution behind our actions, I realized that inspired me to keep going on. And one of the things that people often say is that what difference can one person make? And but when there are many people like us coming together on a common quest, then our collective impact can be extraordinary. And to show the power of that collective impact, we have a global meter, which shows the collective savings made by all users combined. So the name of the app is Cool the Globe. And when we released it, I realized that the real challenge was in actually telling people that we have the power as individuals to do something about climate change. And so we started campaigning for it. We released simple videos talking about the app. And a lot of those videos went viral. It reached over 2 million people from all over the world. And now we have 15,000 users from 55 countries coming together to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. And together, we've saved over 1,000 tons of emissions. Now, what also happened in this process is that I met such amazing people like you, stories of ordinary people making a big difference with small changes in their lives. And we have big plans for this app. We want to get more and more amazing people like you on board. We want your support in making it reach as many people as possible. So I would love to have you all as a part of this family. And I would just like to close by saying that when I was in school, I always looked at the history books and I thought that such amazing times people used to be born in, when there were exciting things happening. You know, I always wanted to be a part of wars and big transformations. And I always thought that the times we live in right now are very boring. And as I started working on this, I realized that we are, as much as doing something about climate change is a responsibility, even more than that, it's an opportunity, because we find ourselves at the cusp of our youth in some of the possibly some of the most defining decades of human existence. And it's a beautiful power that we can hold in our hands today. The 141 people that are here at this event today, if we all decide to take small actions in our day-to-day life to do something about the big changes like climate change happening in the world, then our collective impact can truly be extraordinary. So thank you so much for having me here. And I really look forward to the rest of the day and hearing from the rest of the speakers.
Thank you so much, Miss Prachi. That was really amazing. Can we have a round of applause or Zoom applause?